Hello, welcome. I'm so glad that you all are here today. My name is Annette Mulligan. I am the operator-owner of Mulligan Speaks. I am an integrated wellness coach, presenter, and Arbonne consultant. But beyond that, I am also a legally blind type 1 diabetic. Type 1 diabetic since the age of 2. And as a child growing up, I was told by every doctor that I saw, you're gonna die young. You're probably not gonna reach adulthood because of the diabetes. Spoiler alert, I made it to full-on adulthood, despite all of the things that they told me. Now, these doctors were not being unkind or mean or trying to threaten me into taking care of myself. The truth is, at the time, they didn't know any better. This was back in the early 60s, and diabetic management was almost non-existent. And so, even though they were giving me that death sentence, you're gonna die young, I kept having birthdays. Until I reached the age of about 21, and then some of the major complications of diabetes started to settle in. I started to lose my sight. It took a number of years after that before I really began to understand that my health and my wellness was really up to me, and I needed to start taking it seriously. And at that time, I came up with this philosophy of life that I live by, which includes 3 phrases. And these 3 phrases are, live beyond the diagnosis, own your health, and create clear dialogue with your health care team. Now, those are great sayings, I think, but what do they actually mean? That's what we're going to do here for the next few minutes, is unpack what those sentences, those phrases mean, and hopefully you will be able to follow along with those and say, hey, that might be something I could do. Or this could be something I could share with someone else who's struggling with their chronic pain or chronic illness. And that really is my hope as we go through this. You do have a piece of paper there, which it gives you some blanks to fill in if you feel so led to do that as I walk through these 3 really important principles. Now, the first one is living beyond the diagnosis. And what this really is talking about are the 3 A's. The 3 A's of acknowledging you have some kind of health condition, accepting that you have that condition, and then addressing what you need to do about that. Now, to some degree, all of us throughout our lives have different health situations that come and go, but in all of them, that idea of saying, I'm acknowledging that I do have this condition or this situation, and therefore, I need to also acknowledge or accept that I need to do something about this. And then the addressing part of it is, okay, what is it gonna look like? How many times have you talked to someone who has said to you, oh yeah, I've got this problem, but I just don't feel like I wanna follow my doctor's directions. Or, it'll be okay, it'll take care of itself. Or if I do the bare minimum, I'm sure I'll get by. I'm sure we've all even said that ourselves. I was saying that to myself for a long time. But think about this reality. If everybody who was saying that woke up one morning and said, hey, you know what? I want to take this seriously. I want to take my health seriously. I want to step into what I need to do. I want to live that life that I'm really choosing to live beyond what I've been diagnosed as. What would happen if I started to make those changes? What do you think would start happening if people started to make those changes? What would our healthcare system look like? What would our workforce look like? I once had a conversation with a retired doctor, and we were talking about all kinds of different things and struggles that he had gone through, and somehow the conversation of prescriptions being written out came up. And I said to him, So you wrote a lot of prescriptions. How many did you write in a given year or month or whatever? And then he said to me something that was really sad. He said, you know, the truth is that of all of the prescriptions that I wrote for my patients, only 30% ever filled them. I said, 30? He said, yeah, 30%. And he said, of that 30%, I haven't got a clue as to how many actually filled them, how many actually took them the way that they were prescribed. And I said, why do you think that is? And he said, a lot of it has to do with money, with finances, but he said most of it has to do with people saying, it's okay, I'll be all right, I don't really need to take this. The doctor just is over worried about my condition. So that whole idea of acknowledging that we have a condition, accepting that we do have that, and then moving right into the idea of addressing that issue has to come from one place, and that one place is your purpose, your motivation, your why. Most people are never going to get to the point where they've accepted and they're acting on the changes that need to happen if they do not have a strong why behind them that keeps them going, keeps them moving towards the results that they are looking for. When I first began to make the changes in my life because of the wonder doctor that I came under and his care, my first reason for wanting to make these changes was I did not want to die young. I knew I was being told that, and I was already starting to see those complications hit me, and I thought, uh-oh, I don't want that. That was my first motivation for making the changes. As I grew and as I matured, the second motivation that I went into was I don't want my friends and family to be supporting me for the rest of my life. If I don't have the independence and ability to take care of myself, who else is going to do that? And I don't want to put that burden on someone else. My third motivation, which is where I am today, is that because I made those changes back then, I am now able to step forward to help other people. And that's what gets me up. That's what gets me going. That's what causes me to want to coach people, to come and do presentations like this. That's what gets me going and keeps me going. And so it's really important that each of us understands our why and the purpose to keep us going and to keep us motivated to stay on track. So you've gotten through the acknowledge and the accepting and the addressing, and right into that pathway is the owning your health, which is the idea of acting on the action steps. You've said you're ready to address it, but now you need to get serious and start acting on the action steps. And those action steps are the ones that you and your professional health team come up with. Hopefully you're having a conversation with them and you're saying, what is the best thing to do? What is the first thing that I need to do to make those changes? Now, for me, when I was in my early 30s and came under the care of this amazing endocrinologist who helped me to understand that I needed to take this more seriously, first step he wanted me to take was start taking your blood sugars regularly. I'd been a diabetic since the age of 2. I'm 30 at the time. And I didn't know anything about taking my blood sugars regularly because, again, the technology didn't exist. He hands me my first glucometer, and he says to me, all right, take your blood sugars 4 times a day, keep a record of them, and when you come back and see me, we'll go over that. We'll figure out if your insulin is matching up to what your blood sugars are doing. Next time I'd come back, we were lucky if I had taken my blood sugars 4 times in that month. I had never had to do this before. I didn't see how it correlated with anything because I had never had to do this before. So my doctor decided that I needed more of a drill sergeant than I did a cheerleader to be able to get my blood sugars down and actually take them and record them and give them to him. So here's what we did. He said, here's how we're going to do it. You're going to take your blood sugars every 2 hours. Get a notebook. Start writing down the time every 2 hours. What do you give yourself before, what amount of insulin do you give yourself before a meal? When do you exercise? Keep that journal. Call me at the end of the day, report what your numbers are. I'll give you a scale of what you need to do for your insulin. Do that in the morning, do that in the evening. Do that in the morning, do that in the evening. We did this for almost 2 weeks. All through the night, every 2 hours, I had to check my blood sugars all through the day. This was hard, very, very hard. This was before all kinds of modern technologies. There were no cell phones, there were no insulin pumps, there was nothing to do this. He was literally my first insulin pump and continuous glucose monitor in person, my first interactive one. And it was fantastic that he was doing that. As we would do it, and he would check those numbers, he would say, all right, increase your insulin here, decrease it here, go ahead and move it over here, let's do this, let's do that. So after the 2 weeks, and we had taken all of these numbers, he would say, all right, now just go back to taking your blood sugars 4 times a day. Guess what? Man was brilliant. Doing it 4 times a day was easy compared to the every 2 hours. And I'm like, every 4 times a day, I can do that, no problem. And we'd go for quite a while, and my blood sugars would get into that, what we call the balance or the target zone for my diabetes. And then something would happen. I would get sick. I would go on vacation, which always caused my blood sugars to go haywire. And we'd have to start all over again. We did that for a period of almost 2 years, on and off, on and off, on and off. And then after that time, he said, I think you're ready for the insulin pump. He had literally been getting me ready to do what the insulin pump was going to help me to do. But my first step was understanding the importance of taking my blood sugars 4 times a day at least. And that was a hard one for me, but he knew what he was doing, and he got me to that point. So my question to you all, what is the first step? What is the first step for you? Again, this needs to be something that you and your health team, your medical providers, that you come up with. But what are some common first steps when someone is dealing with a health condition of any sort? Maybe you've been told a first step, or maybe you know of a friend or a physician has told you what your first step needs to be. I'd love for you just to call them out, and yes, you need to call them out loud through your mask so we can hear them. But what are maybe some common first steps that you can think of?
Lose weight.
We're going to come back to that, thank you. What are some other ones?
Eating choices, food choices.
Eating choices, food choices. Anything else?
Exercise.
Exercise.
Water.
Water, hydrating. Perhaps taking your medicine on a regular basis. Perhaps keeping your doctor appointments as you're supposed to, following the instructions that they give you. Any one of those can be the first step, but it has to be between you again and your provider to understand what those first steps need to be, and then you have to be the one to say, I will take those first steps. Now we talked, these two lovely ladies here talked about nutrition, eating choices, and I am going to talk a little bit about that one because this is huge. As a type 1 diabetic, I have to be incredibly mindful of what goes into my body. Technically, we all need to be incredibly mindful, but for me, this is a pretty big part of the struggle that I had as a child and as a young adult. So oftentimes people will say, oh, I know I need to lose weight, but it's so hard and I don't really know how to get started. Here's my question. If millions of people across the US lose weight every day, why is weight loss still such a huge ordeal? Why do we have such a massive increase in obesity, in preventable chronic conditions, in the complications that accompany obesity and chronic conditions? why is it so high, those different things, if weight loss happens every single solitary day? And even keeping the weight off for a lot of people, they're like, oh, that's not a problem for me. I believe that weight loss and even keeping the weight off, losing weight and keeping it off, are not the real problem. The real problem is our relationship with food. We all know that the American diet, the Western world diet now is completely whacked out. I mean, it's just not in a good place. And our perspective on food is very different than, let's say, 300, 400, 500, 600 years ago, definitely. We use food in this culture and in this society as a way of comforting ourselves or consoling, or as a celebration factor. We use it in a way to shame people. We use it as punishment. We even use it as a weapon against people sometimes. And who's to blame for why our mindset is there today? Everybody. Farming practices, food production policies, healthcare systems, education, entertainment, social media, advertising, government. There is not an entity out there today that we're not all involved with on some level that has not played a part in affecting how we view food today. And how we view food today is a huge part of making a change in that. Back in 2018, I had 3 big milestones that were just kind of whacking me right in the face. And this was one of those points where I went, ooh, I need to make another change, because where I'm going is not in a direction I want to. Number 1, I weighed the most I had ever weighed in my entire life. Number 2, my blood glucose levels were not extreme, but they were at the farthest end of normal. There's a range that I keep them in, and they just were like bumping up against that. And number 3, I have to admit it, I was turning 60 at that time, and I went, I'm a type 1 diabetic, and I'm turning 60, and I'm gonna carry all of this weight and all of these other things with me? That's not a good plan. So I decided to make a change, and that change was stepping into a program that helped me to understand at that time I was frustrating my body by what I was putting into it instead of just fueling my body. I had to rethink my relationship with food. I had to look at what I was eating. I did have to make some choices of eliminating some things because they just were not good for me, and adding in those things that would be better for me. Now, that plan in that program that I decided to start off with, and it started with a 30 days to healthy living, is called Arbonne. If you've never heard of it, you can talk to me later about that. It is wonderful, but what it is a plant-based nutrition system that helps your body to understand it helps your body just to take what you're putting in and to draw out of it the nutrients and be able to fuel your body to do what your body is designed to do instead of frustrating it, instead of the inflammation that we're putting into it, and instead of the sluggishness that our food can cause us. Now, Arbonne is not a weight loss program at all. In fact, that's one of the things they say. That's not what they're all about. But the fact that you begin to start eating better and taking the nutrition in that your body needs, your body kind of just sloughs off the weight. In fact, I started to lose weight, and I continued to do it. I was never hungry. I was never having cravings for anything. It worked for me. Everybody has a different system that can work for them, and that's fine. And I encourage everybody to figure out what that system is. But for me, this worked well. Once I was done with the 30 days, I said, why would I stop there? I'm just gonna keep going with this. And I did, and I've been on it since that time. And it has really, really helped me, and I'm grateful for that. But that whole idea of Yes, I lost weight. Yes, I felt better. But the most important thing that came out of that was my view of food changed. My relationship with food changed. I looked at things in the grocery store and went, you're not going to fuel me. You're going to frustrate me. I ain't buying you. And I took stuff in my cupboards out and I threw them in the trash or I gave them to friends because I said, this is not helping me. And I need to make sure at this point in my life I'm helping myself so that I can help others. There is no reason in the world when you go to making the changes and eating a program or a diet that is healthy and helpful to you, that you need to starve yourself, that you need to deprive yourself of the food you like. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about craving the best food for you, craving that which will just keep you going and keep you satisfied. Whatever system or program you choose to do, that's fantastic. That's what I want you to do. Because that is one of the main reasons that I think our American healthcare system, our American healthcare, not just the system, is struggling so much and so many people are having so many difficulties is because of that poor relationship that they have, which includes sugar, fat, processed foods, all those things that are just not what our bodies need. So back to that first step. That was what this whole conversation was about, right? What is that first step that you need to take? Let's say you are a patient and your doctor has told you you need to take that first step. Know what that first step is. Know what you need to do in order to own your health. If you are a support team member, these are the people that are family and friends of those who might be struggling with a chronic health condition. As a support team member, how can you help your loved ones to make those choices, to make those decisions? Not to cajole, not to threaten, not to guilt them, because you can never make another person care enough to change themselves. They have to make that choice. And that goes back to their why. But as a support team member, how are you supporting them? How are you helping them to move forward in that way? If you happen to be in the medical field or you know of other people who are, how can you help your patients to do that, to make those first steps, to do the things that they need to do in order to get to that point where they own their health, where they're not being just so distracted and even lives destroyed because they have not taken those first steps to make those initial changes in living beyond the diagnosis and owning their health. All right, so the next phase or phrase is create a clear dialogue between you and your healthcare team. That doctor that I had the pleasure of working with was like no other doctor I had ever met. And I'm sure there are plenty of him out there. I just hadn't met any of them yet in my time as in growing up with type 1. In fact, I hated going to the doctor. I hated going. Why? Because they would say, why haven't you done what we told you? You know, you're not going to get healthier if you don't do what we tell you to do. I would walk out in tears sometimes because I felt like they were bullying me. They were, I don't know, the attitude that they took towards me, the patient, was not motivating me at all to make any changes. And then I met this doctor, and he literally turned my world upside down. So this idea of creating clear dialogue, it is the idea of accessing support and resources in your life. And that should start with your healthcare team. So you want to access as many resources and support as you can as you move forward in your healthcare. This doctor, you heard in the last section there, knew what I needed, and he knew how to get me to where I wanted to make these changes. And along the way, he taught me how to be an awesome patient. That may sound weird, but that's exactly what he did. Because every time I would come in, he helped me to know that I needed to come in prepared for my appointment with him. He had asked me to do something at the last visit. He was expecting me to have done that and to have some kind of a report on it. I needed to get my lab work done before I went in so we could go over it. So I had to do that. He would ask me these great questions. Well, how about this? How long has that been happening? Did you notice this? Did you notice that? I always called him my medical detective because he was great at detecting what was happening simply by asking me questions. Well, those questions kind of permeated into me so that as I was going on to different providers, different physicians, different health team members, and even up through today, I now ask those kind of questions. I go in and I ask the kind of questions, the who, what, where, when, how kind of questions that help me to better understand my health. So part of what you might want to do in becoming an awesome patient is research, know what it is you're dealing with. You can find anything on the internet to help you to understand what you're dealing with. However, you want to make sure that your sources are accurate. So start by asking your provider, your professional, where could I go to find out more about this? I right now have, I think I counted, 7 different people that are what I consider my healthcare team. From my eye doctors to the assistants to dental to all of the different people that I engage with on an ongoing basis. And I work really, really hard to make sure that I have a very positive partnership mentality with them. Yes, they may have much more knowledge in the area of medication or of health. I want to get that information from them, but I want to make sure that as I talk with them, as I engage with them, that I am being positive and that I'm viewing this as a partnership, not as an antagonist. I don't want to be that patient who is always grumbling and complaining about things. I don't want to be that patient who says, well, you're just not listening to me. Or as I observe a lot of different people in a lot of different settings and talk with them, I literally saw one person say on a Facebook post the other day, doctors are so mean. And she proceeded to tell what had happened. And I'm reading it going, that wasn't your doctor's fault, that was your fault. But I didn't say anything. Because so often, and again, in our culture, things have gotten a little bit out of whack from what they used to be. Doctors used to be the all-knowing, everything. They were never wrong. Well, we figured out that that wasn't true. But we also have this idea that I'm not feeling well, I have a problem, I'm going to go to you, you're going to fix me. You're either going to give me some medication or in some way you're going to fix me. That is the mentality that a lot of people approach their healthcare with, when the reality is it needs to be that partnership. It needs to be that the doctors are going to tell you what you can do, give you recommendations and suggestions. It is up to you to make those things happen and to figure out if it's not working, contact your doctor. Say, this isn't working. What do I need to do now? Part of when I went on the insulin pump, every time they upgrade the insulin pump, my team is always like, you need to stay in touch with us. Is it working? Tell us what your blood sugars are. And they want to know, because the idea is they're there to help you, not to hurt you. So work with them. I tend to be someone who is pretty, as you might have guessed, excitable and enthusiastic and very forward-thinking. And most doctors and their assistants appreciate that. My goal every time I talk to them is to make them laugh or to give them a smile for the day. Because I know that they're dealing with people who don't do that, who could care less what they're thinking, because it's all about them. I want to learn, I want to know how to help myself more, but I also want to create a good relationship with my team so that when I call or when I come in, they're like, oh, goody, Annette's here, instead of, oh, God, Annette's here. That's the image or the impression that I want to leave with my healthcare team. It's not always easy. In fact, I will say this, if you are currently under the care of any kind of professional health person and it isn't going well, they're either not listening to you, they're not responding well to you, you don't feel like they're giving you the best treatment that you need, consider stepping away from them. Consider finding someone else. Ask around. Do you have a good endocrinologist? Do you have a good nutritionist? Do you have a good physical therapist? Get information and perhaps make the change. I have had to in my life 3 times, that's all, 3 times, made a change because I just wasn't connecting well with the people that I was dealing with. And that made a huge difference in my life. So here's the thing. How are you doing with creating that clear dialogue with your healthcare team? If you are a patient, how are you doing on that? Maybe that's something that you need to work on in creating the positive, clear dialogue with them. If you're a support team member, how can you help your loved one have that kind of relationship and develop that positive attitude when they go to see their healthcare providers? If you are in the medical profession, hopefully you're working at that as well. Hopefully you're making your patients feel comfortable and want to talk with you and want to share with you. I give you a scenario. You have a little pain in your leg. It's been there for, I don't know, 3-4 weeks maybe. You finally decide, and your partner says to you, will you please go to the doctor and figure out why this is bothering you? Because all you do is complain about it. You walk in, you're sitting there and you're in the patient room. Doctor comes in, says, hi, how are you doing? I've got this pain in my leg. How long has it been there? I don't know. Oh. Doctor, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 months? Oh, okay, about 3 weeks, 4 months, 4 weeks. Okay. What kind of pain is it? I don't know. Is it a shooting pain? No. Is it a dull throbbing pain? Sometimes. At night? Maybe. In the morning? No. You see where I'm going with this? The doctor is having to spend so much time trying to find out what's going on. Come prepared. If you're coming in for a regular checkup, know what the doctors are going to ask. If you're going in because of a specific issue, date, time, intensity, all of those things, it helps to cut down on the time that your doctor has to ask all those questions. Those are still important things that they need to know, and you want them to ask questions, but help to make that whole appointment time flow a little bit easier by coming in prepared to talk with your provider and to let them know what's going on. I have a doctor's appointment in a couple of weeks with my endocrinologist. I have 3 things on my list. Yes, I keep a list. I'll say, this has been happening, because I know the first thing the nurse is going to say to me is, what do you want to talk to the doctor about today? I will list those things. The doctor will then come in and she'll say, what do you want to talk about? Even though I've already told the nurse, I still need to say it to the doctor. And that is how you become a better patient, by coming in prepared, knowing what you want to talk to the doctor about, and seeing where that particular appointment ends up or where it goes. So those are my 3 statements: living beyond the diagnosis, owning your health, and creating clear dialogue with your healthcare team. They have helped me. I hope in some way they are going to help you as well and give you some support, some encouragement, and some motivation if you're in need of making some changes, or even if you know of somebody else. Maybe all of you sitting here are perfectly healthy. You got no health issues at all. Let's say you know somebody who is dealing with something. Maybe you can help them with that. Another way that you might be able to help them is, oh yes, of course I have a book. It's called Living Beyond the Diagnosis. I just had it published, and it's basically my story of dealing with type 1 diabetes and all of the complications and things that have affected me over the years, but more importantly, it's full of suggestions and ideas and strategies on how you, other people, can work through whatever their situation happens to be, and maybe be able to find answers that they haven't been able to find before. And if nothing else, to create a mindset that says, just because I have this situation does not mean my life is over. That does not mean I can't fully function in the way that I would like to. I never in my life thought that I would be able to live alone, that I would be able to work, that I would be able to do any of the things that I'm doing now. But because I took that mindset of I'm not going to let this stop me and I'm going to do the best I can, I am now living the life I've wanted to. And I'm excited about that and excited to where the future is going. And I hope you are that way as well. I would like to know if there are any questions or comments that you may have. Yeah.
I guess in my experience, I've noticed that there are a lot of people, at the onset, there are a lot of people who are like, I feel fine, this is no big deal. And on the other end of the spectrum, it's like, oh my God, I'm going to die. And you have to find that place that's in between.
Yes.
and adjust your approach by avoiding those two extremes.
Yes, that is exactly right. It's avoiding the I'm going to die or I don't need to do anything about it, and is finding that middle ground, whatever that may be. But like you said, I'm fine, so that usually means I'm not going to do anything about it until it gets over here, and then it's sometimes too late. Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Any other comments or questions? Okay, well, I am at, what booth are we at? 5. I am at booth 5. If you would like to come over and buy a book, or if you want to ask me any other questions about what I've just shared, I would love to chat with you. If you buy a book today, I'll autograph it. Apparently that's a thing, and I'm more than happy to do that for you. So, yes, ma'am.
I have a question. What do you do besides what you just did here? Do you speak to groups?
I do. Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. I didn't go into a lot of detail about that, but I do. I speak to groups that specifically are dealing with health or not so much nutrition, but with health and chronic health conditions. I also do coaching. Integrated wellness, wow, I don't know where that word went. Integrated wellness, which is where I talk about what I just talked about, mind, body, and spirit being able to work together to make a change in your life. So I can do individual coaching. I can also do group coaching, family members needing some assistance in that way. So primarily I do the presentations and the trainings and the coaching, but then of course I'm also an Arbonne consultant. So thank you very much for asking that question. Anything else? All right. Thank you all very much for coming today. I appreciate it greatly. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and take care. Be well. Thank you.